Okay guys, tonight I'm going to attempt to restore a broken antler. This 12 pointer lost. He lost this antler when he died and fell down the ravine. And I went back the next day to get it. Had about 6 inches of snow drop overnight and I could not find it. All these were stuck in the ground that far. And somehow or another he broke that one. So we're going to attempt to reproduce an antler, and we're going to use a coat hanger. The problem with this is I have no way of holding this in a vise to do this. So this is my attempt. I know this is like, I don't know. I don't know how to keep it. A drill bit, you want to start at an angle like this first. All right. Now we're going to epoxy that in. First, we're going to have to figure out our bend here. I don't want it coming straight this way. I think it's going to come to about here, and then it's going to start bending straight up just by going by the other side. I've been staring at this for an hour trying to figure out if I take this line straight off, it just doesn't look right when it comes up like that. Well, my garage has been invaded by ladies, so I had to come to the kitchen. I keep looking at this, my support wire, and if I run this one straight off here, I just don't think it's going to look right. But that's the angle that it looks like it's going, especially when you look at the other one. So we put a bunch of bend to it, and I think I'm going to be happy with that. So at least the top is going to be. So I think that's what we're going to go with, that right there. So we're going to mix us up some epoxy. The epoxy we're going to use is the same that I used to put the rearview mirror on the Jaguar. It dries in 5 minutes. It's a fast epoxy. We don't need much. Oh, that's going to be way too much, but we just need a little bit. But now with like body filler, you want to try and keep all the air bubbles you can out of it. Alright, I'm going to try and make sure that it doesn't move for 5 minutes. I use Kwikwood, and the biggest issue with this is getting the diameter right. And if you follow the directions, it says to use gloves. It must not be good for your hands, although you see people. Now you could use epoxy sculpt. Got to knead it together really good until it is a consistent color. Now we're only going to have a working time of 15 minutes. The reason I'm using Kwikwood is the color will be real similar. See that? See why you have to use a wire. If you get too far without a support on the inside, you see what's happening. So you want to take a little bit of water and wet your hands. Smooth out all your fingerprints. Got to get a real smooth transition to the other antler. That's what we're going to use the water for. See, we got a lot of chunkiness. Now when it starts to set up, we're going to start putting grooves in it. Because if you look at an antler, it is not completely smooth. There are ridges in it, and actually the ridges are where the blood vessels are when it was in velvet. I'm not happy with this chunkiness we got right in here. All I'm doing at this point is trying to babysit. I think that's going to be the tool of choice here. You can actually roll it. Just keep dipping it in water. But you can always take sandpaper and smooth that out if you really wanted to. But yeah, lessons learned. Roll it out on glass instead of using your hands to get rid of the chunkiness. I have to stain it yet, put some patini on it, but how does it look from 10 foot away? See, we're going to run stain all the way up to here, so, and wipe it off to make it to look like that. That cost all of $8 to do. But when you use the Kwikwood, see how the color is going to match the tips? And we're going to use dark walnut to give it these dark patini on the way up. So I'll get back with you after we stain it. Roll it out on glass first. Here's another angle with the 8-foot rule. If it's hanging on a wall, would you know that G2 is fake? That chunkiness is just bothering me. But then look at G3. Look at some of the chunkiness on G3. You might wonder why I'm still wearing a glove, but that's how I can monitor how it sets up. See, it's still not set up over an hour. Supposed to set up in 15-20 minutes. I don't know what the issue is. Here I'm worried about the chunkiness, but yet look at that right there. Look at that right there. Look at this one. See how S-shaped that is? And I'm worried about my chunkiness. Same way with that one. See the reason I use those nickel to get into those grooves? I'm no artist, but now after this dries a little bit, we are going to polish this a little bit with some sandpaper. Polish this tip, we're just going to use some 400 grit wet dry and just polish it so it's smooth like the rest of these are all polished. Now you don't want to go over the stain like this because you're putting sanding marks into the stain, so if you're going to do that, you need to go up like this. Okay guys, it's been, I don't know, 15 days on this maceration. You need to make sure you keep it covered really well. If you don't, you'll have possums. So there it is. We're going to do a water change in maybe another day and it'll be done, ready to soak in some ammonia and water and Dawn. Okay, you need to disconnect. Well, the Antlers just fell off. Okay, I usually don't spray anything off till it's almost ready to be done. I get the antlers really good there. Just like that, and then we're going to put it in a bucket, put it on. Okay guys, I've decided it needs a couple more days. We still got a little bit of, what it is, it's the myelin sheath from the nerves. It covers the nerve. You'll see it is white. Some people call it grease, but it's actually the nerves. So if you see over here on the right, if you don't know how I'm doing this, that is a fish tank heater set at 90 degrees. I don't know, this takes a week to 2 weeks depending upon the outside ambient temperature, because it has been below freezing every night, and when I started it, it was 10 degrees. We're going to give it another day or two. Okay, after about 2 days of soaking, the water, the Dawn, the ammonia, you're going to see it's going to get all cloudy, and that's all the final nastiness coming out. At this point, we're going to pull it and we're going to zip tie the nasal bones and dry it in the sun for the afternoon, and tomorrow we'll bleach it. I want to get 3 really big zip ties, and we're going to zip tie these nasal bones. They're wet. They're positioned perfectly, but as this dries, especially in the sun, it's real common for this to warp. Pull them all together like that. We're going to let it bake in the sun. And at this point, any of that white stuff, now's a good time to try and rub it off the antler burr. There's still quite a bit of, you got to be careful or you're going to wipe away. Most of this, you start analyzing it and it's tree bark. Okay, 2 quarts of hydrogen peroxide into this container. Put you a Ziploc bag full of water to help displace, so you don't need as much hydrogen peroxide. You see where we zip tied it. So then several times a day, you're going to take a turkey baster and you're just going to go, just wet this skull down all over the spots. Do not get it on the antlers, but get under the antler burrs really well. But every time I do this, there's usually a brown spot right in here and right in here. Those are the areas you really got to work on. The rest of it, what's sitting in the hydrogen peroxide, is usually not an issue. But if you just do this 4 or 5 times a day, wet this bone down really good. Another thing you can do is take some baking soda and add it to the hydrogen peroxide, scoop it out, make a paste, and you let the paste sit right up on here. I've tried paper towels numerous times, but it's almost like it starts to mold under the paper towel, or the paper towel's not making good contact. So I don't like to leave a paper towel for 4 or 5 days. I've had grease spots. The last one I did had some grease spots right there and right there. So I put Dawn dishwashing liquid on them for 2 or 3 days and then washed them off. Get motion going on here, get it all moving. Squirt some up in the sinus cavities here. Just wet it down a couple times a day, and I don't know, 2 or 3 days, your skull's going to be just as white as can be. I used to say it cost you $2. They've raised the prices on these. Just buy the cheapest stuff you can get, and it works good. I've done tons of these. But as you can see, there's still, if you saw that water, how it was when I was soaking it in ammonia and Dawn, how cloudy the water got, you'll see there's still some, probably should have rinsed it again. But anyways, after this soaks for 2 or 3 days, then we'll rinse it off again before we pull it out and let it dry. About completed, but it's real common that a lot of times if you don't let it macerate long enough, you'll get a little bit of, they're yellowed areas, and it's actually some fat. You'll get little areas right in through here, and possibly in through here or the back. Because what happens is I can't put this whole skull down in the hydrogen peroxide without getting hydrogen peroxide on the burrs, and then it'll bleach out the burrs. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take some baking soda, and we are going to make up a paste. Another trick I do a lot, if I notice any kind of grease areas, is just put straight Dawn dishwashing liquid right on it and let it sit for a couple days. Now what I've been doing for A couple times a day, just take a turkey baster, go over it, just like that. I think it's done. Since the hydrogen peroxide won't be any good once you can't reuse it, you know, that's why they come in these bottles. Sunlight destroys it, UV light destroys it. Being open to the atmosphere is going to just destroy it. Once you open a jar, you really need to use it. It's H2O2, and you're going to lose that oxygen atom, and it's just going to turn to, that's going to be just plain water. Once all the oxygen's out, it's going to be plain water. This is like mixing concrete. It's always too dry, and then all of a sudden I get it too wet. That's me. You get impatient and then you add too much when you should be adding drops. So I don't know, you want to get it textured, I don't know, drywall mud, I guess you might want to say. And so up around the burrs, I'm going to put this. And then for the next day or two, I might put a drop or two of new hydrogen peroxide on this. Now remember, this has only been what? I think this is the third day. So it's basically done in 3 days. But if you want it that really shiny white, I don't like using the mop and glow or any of that kind of stuff people are talking about, because bone is not shiny, and there are people that are going to spray clear coat, all kinds of stuff on this, and I tried that once, and the clear coat, it might have been polyurethane, whatever I sprayed on it yellowed, and now you've got I don't know, just bone is white. Don't try and make it anything other than what it is. You know, sure, not shiny. So there you go. Now, we're going to let this go overnight, and maybe another day we'll just put a couple drops of fresh hydrogen peroxide on it. Then we're going to take it and we're going to put it in the tub, and we're going to pour what little bit of hydrogen peroxide's left back over the inside orifices, and that will help with any kind of odors you might still have. So remember, I hot macerated this, or warm macerated, so it had smell for a day or two. Okay, another technique I do, remember, you need to be moving this hydrogen peroxide around 2 or 3 times a day, but I will go up the nasal, up the conscious, blow up one side rapidly, and then the other side. And when you're doing this, you will see it coming out. You will see it coming out either eye socket, because there's an opening right there. You will see it coming out. Want to get this nasal opening really good. And the other one. Just be patient. Let the hydrogen peroxide do the work, and it's going to look beautiful. Okay, after we leave dry for 24 hours. Okay, we have no missing bones. Everything is totally attached. But this nasal shield up here, what would it be called? Maxilla. When it dries, that's the reason I put zip ties. When it dries, it has a tendency to want to warp, and it will gap up in here. It'll gap there and gap back there. So that's why we put the zip ties on there, just temporarily. It won't fall apart or anything, but it will gap. So what we want to do, we're going to run a bead there. And a bead there of just plain old Elmer's glue. And while we're at it, to make it stronger, we'll run a bead straight up like that. Now, if you're worried about it not sticking up too much, you're going to take a Q-tip, something like that, an old zip tie, and we'll just level it off like that, and then we can come back and we're going to let that dry overnight, and that will let it dry overnight, and then we can remove those zip ties and it'll be good forever. Another spot you might want to think about is these sutures in through here. What I think is so cool when you do European mounts is to be able to age the deer and see health problems they might have. Look at this cavity. You might think, how did a deer get a cavity? But what are they eating? Corn, right? What's in corn, right? Sugar, right? You can usually let the whole thing stand like this. But at this point, we are going to put Elmer's glue. None of the teeth have fallen out, but there are some that are loose. So we are going to go around just like that. And then the soft pallet will run a bead down that like that, and then it'll be done. So yeah, most mature whitetails will stand up on their antlers upside down like that. So let it dry overnight, and